So, wow, a lot of you had a lot to say about the Big Mike video, and I definitely agree that it's not as simple as, oh, the scores are too high, let's bring them back down, and that'll save bowling. That's not what I was trying to say. And while I'm not going to put words in his mouth, according to the article he wrote, it's not what Mike was trying to say either. I've linked that in the description. If you want to see what he wrote, it is free to read. There are a lot of challenges facing the competitive bowling industry right now, and I'm going to talk about everything I can think of and touch on a lot of the points you made because there were a lot of great ones. This is one of those the cat's already out of the bag type situations, and it's not as simple as just putting it back in. I'm going to obviously try to do this more podcast style too, so sorry about the video quality, but it's nothing you have to watch, and this should make the audio quality better too. If you like this kind of feel or setting, I'll work on the lighting in here so that my face doesn't look like my mini fridge back there. There are a couple graphics in a couple different places, though, throughout here. I will call them out as we get to them, though. For starters, I have no issue with the current bowling meta, theoretically. I think it creates a situation where the skill ceiling's super high. If you put the time and effort in, you're going to create a gap between you and everyone else. From knowledge of the equipment, to layouts, to lane surfaces, to oils, to all kinds of other details, knowing that stuff can give you a real edge. And then if you have a good physical game to back it up, the sky's the limit. At the same time, the slope is very steep and it creates a situation where it's extremely cost and time prohibitive for most people. If you can't or don't buy a handful of balls a year, you're just not going to consistently compete at any level, whether you get up to practice or not. And that's where the key is here. If you put in the work and the time and the effort learning and getting out to practice, you should be rewarded. But bowling is very dependent on having the bankroll to back that up. More time and more money invested typically equals more success. I mean, you shouldn't be able to bowl once a week and never practice, but still show up at tournaments and be able to compete. But bowling seems to be heavily weighted on the latter end of that now, to the point where as long as you have a lot of equipment, you can show up and compete, even if you just bowl once a week and never practice before you even factor handicap in. And handicap or higher scores have made handicap significantly more volatile too. We'll talk about that later. It's not the blue collar participant friendly sport that it used to be, and that's created a separation between the more serious tournament bowlers and the more recreational league bowlers. Today's average casual bowler or even competitive bowler doesn't walk in with one ball and a pair of shoes and that weird looking A-frame single bag like the Big Lebowski. They walk in with $1,000 worth of equipment to pay 20 or 25 bucks a night for a mixed league and then spend another 30 bucks at the bar, most of the time in an aging center where things don't always work, where the employees don't always give a shit, and where it seems like time stood still, or where a big corporation like Bolero is maximizing profits at the expense of the experience. Open bowlers don't really know the difference, and they don't get upset about it. They pay more for lower quality. They don't care if the lanes are fresh. They don't care if the approaches are clean. They're just having drinks and chucking a ball down a lane or having their kids roll a ball down a dragon ramp. So there's no reason to cater to the competitive bowler anymore because they don't drive the bus anymore. They're more hassle than they're worth because instead of spending money bowling leagues or practicing in the center, they're spending the majority of it on equipment and then spending all their time in the center bitching at staff when they don't bowl so hot because naturally it was the fault of the lanes or the approaches or whatever else. Bowling centers used to be full of league bowlers twice a night, every day of the week. I guarantee some of you watching or listening to this have never heard or conceived of late or second shift leagues, but centers used to run 2 shifts a night. First shift started at 6 or 6:30. The late league started around 9ish, and they didn't re-oil because they didn't really need to. This is when centers and bowling in general was strong enough to make an idea like a Bolero Entertainment Center or a Main Event or an Andy B's have to stand on their own legs in their own space. This is one of those back to the future, you're not thinking fourth dimensionally, Marty, kind of issues where people bowling more 300s isn't in and of itself the problem. All the things that contributed to scores increasing in bowling or the scoring chase are the things that are currently killing it. It's not just, oh, bowling's too easy now and there's scores everywhere and that's why people are quitting. That's part of it in some cases for some people, but the focus on higher scores is why we have all these expensive equipment options. It's why some centers have closed because they weren't as high scoring as other centers in town. It's why we have $50,000 lane machines. It's why we have all these different oil types and patterns. Everything from a technology angle is designed to help you score better, which is really no different from a lot of the technology angles in other games and sports. It's just been so unregulated in bowling that we're past the point of no return, in my opinion. The key part of this that seems to be getting missed is that people don't always want what's good for them. People want to buy a ton of bowling balls. They want prize funds and mixed leagues. They want easier conditions, and they will flock to easier centers. We had 6 centers here in town 25 years ago, and now we have 2, and shocker, they're the 2 highest scoring centers in town. That creates that creates the ecosystem here where, well, that's what people want. That's what proprietors have to do to keep the lights on. Obviously, people want a more relaxed environment to have fun in. So scores aren't the issue. That's what scores are the opposite of the issue. That's what keeps people in business. They are a huge part of the issue, though, because again, the chase for scores and the lack of regulation are what created the monster we're dealing with now. And stick with me as I explain all this. Here's where it gets dodgy, and this is why I think that bowling is ultimately doomed with zero prayer of recovery. The equipment meta has created the majority of the issue. You've got to have a lot of different balls with different layouts and surfaces, and even more if you bowl on tougher conditions. We have balls that flare a ton now that pick up all kinds of oil off the lane and transition them significantly faster than they used to. Then because of transition, we have to have balls for that too. Then as bowling balls hook more, oil volumes increase, and because oil volumes increase, bowling balls hook more. More surface, higher rev rates, and that means oil patterns have to get weird to fight that. That's why we have those $50,000 lane machines to put all those different highly technical specific patterns down. This has also led to the side-to-side disparity. Lefty versus righty didn't used to be that big of a problem because you were using very weak balls that didn't flare on drier lane conditions, that didn't transition much. So while there were some minor differences, it's not nearly what we have now. If you put out a 30 mil pattern and have 9 righties with 500 rev rates using big flaring balls at 1,000 grit, but only one lefty trying to do the same thing, even though you both start with the same pattern, it doesn't even take a game for you to be playing on completely different conditions on each side of the lane. So again, just saying we need tougher conditions doesn't save bowling, because more challenging conditions doesn't really solve the real problems. It actually kind of makes them worse. Even if you make it artificially more difficult with different lane conditions, that just further serves to feed the machine, because that inflates the time and cost exponentially. And those things are already an issue at the recreational level before we even get into the effects higher up. The damaged ecosystem has now created an opportunity for entertainment center corporations like Bolero to swoop in and buy everything up. It's almost like the new Twisters movie. Tornado comes through, destroys everything, and here comes the investor to pick up the land on the cheap. League bowling continues to go downhill, and while theoretically you don't need as much equipment if you just bowl on house shots, the only thing that really spices up the week-to-week league experience is new equipment. Everybody likes to buy new equipment for everything that they do, whether they're just into the gadgets or it makes the game more lively or interesting for them. So again, theoretically, I really don't have a problem with the ball situation we have going on here. The problem is that the league bowler is the only one really keeping the manufacturers afloat, because most serious tournament bowlers are staffers. Now, staffers are somewhat like the league bowler to companies. They keep the lights on, but the big money comes from the consumers. Now, contrary to popular opinion, staffers don't get much of anything for free. They get it cheaper than you do, but they're also buying a lot more stuff every year. And I can promise the vast majority of you watching or listening that staffers spend more on equipment every year than you do. Tournament bowling is huge right now, both in youth and adult, but some high schools have equipment deals with the manufacturers, most colleges do, and the vast majority of regional and professional bowlers have contracts. Now, why do we care about the manufacturers? Well, the companies put tons of money back into bowling. I'd argue that if the companies stopped supporting tournaments in the industry, it would instantly collapse. Thousands of pro shops across the country would close, and so would the large online retailers and distributors. So we need the manufacturers to survive, because their support of competitive bowling is critical. However, competition-wise, we're screwed there too. Most of the time, what I see complained about on social media is, I didn't have the look today, I didn't match up today, I didn't get the right ball in my hands until too late, I didn't have the rev rate to keep up with the scoring pace, wasn't bowling on the right side of the lane, so on and so forth. Bowling has become so needlessly and artificially complicated that it's starting to fall into the realm of a crapshoot or a slot machine. You don't go into a tournament hoping that you bowl well anymore. You go in hoping, first of all, that you get a good cross or a good follow or good pairs, good racks, hope you match up, hope you find the right ball soon enough, etc. Bowling well is one of the last pieces of the puzzle, because if you're bowling with people that aren't playing the lanes right, they're going to make it harder. If you're following people that aren't playing the lanes right, that's going to make it harder. If you get bad pairs, that's a problem. Bad racks are a problem. If you don't match up or find the magic ball soon enough, you have zero chance, no matter how well you throw it. And if you're one of these sadist hipsters that think no matter how hard the conditions are, good bowlers find a way to succeed anyway, that's kind of asinine. If you go play darts, you're either better than your opponent or you're not. Pool, cornhole, basketball, baseball, softball, tennis, pickleball, and even something like golf, where you run into the outdoor elements that can be different in the morning versus the afternoon, the outcome is still more dependent on the skill of the player than it is in bowling, and that's a huge problem. Now, true professionals also don't make excuses. They find reasons. And if you don't know how to differentiate between when it's your fault, bad luck, a bad matchup, bad draw, bad cross, bad follow, or whatever else, you'll chase your tail in the wrong directions. There's always something that you can do better. There's always something you can work on, but sometimes things are out of your control. And instead of beating yourself up about it because you're one of these people, it's always my fault, it's always my fault, it's always my fault, identifying the real issues can help you focus your efforts in the correct direction. If you're a NASCAR driver, you could drive the best race of your life and do everything right, but someone could still put you into the wall or get you loose and ruin your race. And intelligent people understand that. The unfortunate thing here is that there are dozens of legitimate things in bowling that are out of your control and contribute heavily to the outcome no matter how well you bowl. If you have a tournament where half the field is on a house shot and half is on red square, nobody from red square makes the cut. It's that simple. So the conditions and situations do matter. They do factor in. And if you don't understand that, then hop back up on your high horse and ride it back to your circle jerk. The main key factor should always be the performance of the athlete. And that's unfortunately several spots down the list currently in bowling. While the scoring situation and the problems it causes downstream are more serious high average bowler problems, it's still a significant cost for everyone, and bowlers have caused a large number of their own problems here too. I'm not sure why people spend so much money to bowl league because you're on a house shot, and most prize funds are super flat. And I don't need to hear any outliers because I bowl in an outlier league myself. I know that there are some leagues out there that you can win big money back in. I'm talking about the vast majority of leagues for the regular week-to-week handicap and mixed league bowlers, which make up most of the USBC membership. You're spending 9 months and hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year on equipment to maybe get back $50 more than you put into the prize fund throughout the season, and that's if you do really well. Prize funds in the vast majority of leagues are ridiculously stupid because all they do is inflate the weekly cost. If lineage is $15, for example, a lot of leagues will be at 20 or 25 or even $30 to put a bunch of money in the prize fund, but then everybody votes for the flattest prize fund option where first doesn't make that much more than last, and then they complain about the cost of bowling. Now, a lot of people don't understand how this works. They think they put money into the envelope to pay for bowling, and then they win some of it back from the center like a gift or something at the end of the year. If you put $20 in the envelope, that's not lineage. Lineage is what the center takes out of that to pay for your bowling. So if you pay $20 and lineage is $15, $5 then goes into the prize fund, which is separate and then is distributed at the end of the year to all the bowlers. If you just paid lineage for your leagues, you could bowl more. Well, but I like getting something back at the end of the year. Well, then take the money that you'd have put into the prize fund, put that in a savings account, and take it out at the end of the year. I guarantee you it'll be about the same amount. Maybe even more if you still have a secretary fee or a president fee, or you don't win any of the individual or team awards or whatever. Do the math. It doesn't look great for the majority of leagues. Now, I'm no fan of the USBC either, but the membership fee gets unnecessary hate too. It's $15 a year, $15 to belong to an organization that does way more than you know. Well, no, that's wrong. It's 25 or 30. No, that's wrong. USBC only gets $15 of that. So whether you pay 20, some places pay 25, some places are 27, 28, 30, 35, whatever. Your local association gets the rest of that. USBC only gets $15. So, and I guarantee you that most of you don't even know that you have a local association. So what are they doing with your money? The governing body of the sport should also never have been responsible for handing out score awards either. So everyone mad about, well, we don't get patches or rings anymore, so what are we paying for? It shouldn't have ever been a thing to begin with. And if scores and equipment hadn't gotten so outrageous or so far out of control, we probably would still be getting those things. You're also the reason that bowling balls keep coming out so fast. I don't know how many times people would come to the shop and say, hey, my IQ Tour wore out. I need a replacement. And I'd say, well, they're actually still making it. Why not just get another one? Then it's like, well, I already had one. I don't want to just roll the same ball again. So what's something that's new but that's similar? Everybody always wants new and fresh and variety because the complaints are always, well, they're cranking all this stuff out, but nothing's really fresh or innovative. But if something comes out that doesn't say Phase or Venom or Black Widow on it, nobody's interested. So I don't get it. Yes, there are a lot. Yes, they're constantly coming out and it feels overwhelming, but I think that's just from the perspective where most people used to buy or used to try to buy everything from their favorite brand. And I think that's actually a big part of why Motive has the fan base they do. They, even though they're the most expensive company out there, they have that very old school feel to the brand and people really identify with that. Now, courtesy of my friend James Niffen, here is a screenshot of the total releases each year since 2011. And as you can see, there's not that much of a difference over the last 15 years outside of a kind of artificial slowdown after COVID. I'm not really counting those few years. That's to be expected. But 2023 or 2024 on, I think we can start counting again. And 91 last year is right on par with the way that it was 10 years ago. Every other industry has huge product lists and all kinds of variety, but for some reason, people don't want that in bowling. If you're an Oakley fan, you can't possibly buy every pair of sunglasses that they make. You can't buy every type of shoe that Under Armour makes. You can't buy every golf club that TaylorMade makes. It's just not a thing. And it works the same way in bowling. You're not intended to buy every ball that comes out. The intent is to provide variety. I used to have people come into the shop all the time, 10 to 15 years ago, look at the wall and go, I don't see anything new. I guess I'll try again in a couple weeks. Then slowly the culture changed to, damn, everything's coming out too fast or everything's too expensive now. People try to demonize the manufacturers over this, but they're just businesses selling their products. It's not their job to do anything but make good products. However, bowling tech has nowhere to go. Nothing has really changed in the last 10 to 15 years. Things will get nipped and tucked, but nothing is really significantly different, and it won't ever be because ball technology has reached its ceiling. There's only so much you can do because the window that good ball reaction lives in is very small to begin with, and USBC doesn't really have strict specifications anyway. They just kind of built a fence around what was already there. Ball companies can still make stuff that's good and fresh, but it's ultimately just amounting to a new paint job. Bowling balls wear out. You'll always need new ones, so they'll keep making them, but never before seen or brand new just means different, not necessarily improved. Believe it or not, though, few things have really gone up. I mean, bowling ball prices as an average have gone up maybe 10 to 15 bucks overall. And some of you from way back in the day, don't you remember paying 300 bucks for Quantums in the 90s? So it's mostly pro shop services that have seen the increases, and the overall cost of living spike, I think, is what really reinforces that there's a lot more. Your money is not going as far as it used to. It's mostly pro shop services, again, that have seen the increase. But either way, it all combines to be really expensive, and that's where the significance comes in. Bowling throughout is high cost, low reward, and when you factor in the toxicity of bowlers, I've known several good bowlers that loved the game that just quit because they were tired of dealing with the bowlers. They had the money, they had the time, they just didn't want to put up with the drama. Ultimately, I believe that all of this is going to cause the downfall of competitive bowling. This is the reason centers are closing. This is the reason Bolero's taking over the world. This is the reason professional prize funds aren't competitive outside of the top 15 or 10 or 15 people on the points list. And the dominoes are going to continue to fall. Now, I'm optimistic that the youth wave is coming and that the bowling landscape is changing and that people will want different things in the future. But I think that by 2035, we'll have either seen a resurgence or be in major trouble. Now, I'm betting on major trouble because bowling has been made so time and cost prohibitive with so little reward that I think that people are going to let it go, whether by choice or by necessity. If we instead went back to simpler times, plastic and urethane balls with very weak cores, not much oil on the lane, you take away the entire equipment meta, all that expense, you get rid of transition issues, you get rid of side disparity, and you just go back to bowler against bowler, seeing who can make the shots and get the ball through the pins the right way. Because it suddenly doesn't cost thousands upon thousands of dollars to participate anymore. Maybe people start coming back. They maybe get out to practice more. A handicap doesn't end up being so volatile, but here's my ultimate point. A lot of other factors were put out there by all of you, many of which I agree with. The expense, the time, the fact that other more social activities and clubs have been dying off too, toxicity of other bowlers, facilities aren't that great, pro shops that aren't great, 9-month league seasons, it's too complicated and confusing, so on and so forth. Those are all great points. However, let's get back to the start of the paragraph here. Simpler times, much cheaper experience. But if let's say the stars align and every other issue is solved with bowling, the result of that is that by association, scoring pace would go back down because even with the easiest house shot known to man, plastic and urethane just don't score like reactive balls. If the scoring pace goes down, the assumption and likely reality is that people will quit in droves, or at least the big shots will, because that's ultimately what they care about most. If 230 average bowlers all started averaging 200 again, they're going to blame it on everything else and probably quit. That's why I said at the very beginning that you can't just put the cat back in the bag. The scoring chase did, in fact, for several identifiable reasons, cause the huge fall off in bowling, but redacting all that at this point isn't going to fix it. I mean, the solution to anything is rarely, if ever, just reversing the cause. However, let's chase it a little bit further. There's a huge difference between struggling to hit the pocket on tough conditions after you've drug $1,000 worth of balls into the center and scores going down. Let me explain that here. So in today's current bowling environment, you've done the research, you understand cores and layouts and cover types and lanes and oils and patterns and all of it. You've practiced, you've dumped in all kinds of time and money. Or you're just the average league bowler that brings 3 balls in and chucks them at the pins while you're drinking with friends. And all of a sudden you get stuck with sport patterns in league because somebody thought that tougher conditions would save bowling. That sucks. I like bowling on tough conditions, but when you have to turn yourself into a professional to keep up in your Friday mix league, people would riot. Imagine instead, you're only walking in with 1 or 2 balls. You don't have all the math and all the equipment nonsense. It's a basic, simple pattern that's easy to hit the pocket on. The challenge is just getting the ball through the pins the right way consistently enough to raise your scores. That's a fair challenge that I think people would be down for. If you ever held or been to a spare ball or plastic only tournament before, most of the time they're full and very fun because you're stripping away, dragging in 10 bowling balls for people to trip over. You're stripping away the bad cross, the bad follow, the lefties have the world, all of that. It's just you with a bowling ball needing to throw it the right way to strike more often. No convoluted nonsense, needlessly complicating anything. We're back to square one where the bowler's in charge and all these other factors are held to a minimum. I think that resonates with people. I think that if scores go down that way, it's a whole different animal than scores going down by harder, demoralizing conditions that just make you spend more money and time trying to tread water. Well, but wait a minute. Aren't you the ball review guy? Aren't you the one selling and promoting all these balls and companies that you say that we need to get rid of? No, I'm the guy helping you navigate all the marketing and propaganda because you can talk about improving things, but you still have to live in the current situation. The entire world could be a lot better, but while you're trying to create a better tomorrow, you still have to make it through today. And equipment dominates today's game. If you want to be competitive, you have to jump through all the hoops and play the game. Otherwise, you'll never succeed and compete. Now, all the old heads who want to jump in and say, well, that's wrong. You don't need all this equipment to compete. I've been using my AMF angle for 30 years and I'm averaging 187. Well, that's not competing. I could take 1 ball 2 and use it for the next 10 years and tread water in our Friday mixed drinking league just fine, but that's all I'm going to do. If I actually want to travel to tournaments and have a shot to actually compete cash consistently, I have to play the game, which means I have to know my stuff and carry a lot of different options with me. I know plenty of people who just bowl league for fun and drill 1 ball a year, if that, and they're fine. They don't know what all the fuss is about until, again, Bolero buys their center and kicks their league out or makes lineage $20 or their local center has to close because they can't afford to operate anymore, so on and so forth. Finally, we all know this will never change at this point. The manufacturers aren't going anywhere. USB-C isn't going to make any decisions that will step on anyone's toes. We'll just keep getting retreating measures and concessions like string pins, no more requirements on lane conditions since they got rid of the minimum 3 units to the outside thing or whatever that was several years ago, and kind of meaningless adjustments on equipment specs like harder urethane that only affects the top 1% anyway. I've defended string pins, for example, from stupid arguments, but I'm not actually in favor of strings. We all know that approving strings has nothing to do with the integrity or progression of the game. It's a band-aid to help aging centers move forward in a more cost-effective manner as A2s are getting harder and harder to find parts for, and mechanics are retiring. And new mechanics are choosing to make 2 to 4 times the money at not a bowling alley. Also, anyone saying, oh, these places are putting in strings, but the prices aren't going down, so it's just collusion for the centers to make more money. Yeah, because centers are already so wealthy and well off that they're not closing by the dozen every year. They're not selling to Bolero. They're not being bulldozed to make room for a parking lot. And stepping into most centers isn't like time warping back to the 90s either. So yeah, they already had plenty of money. Strings are just obviously a cash grab. So in conclusion, yes, the all-encompassing monster that is the scoring pace or the chase for scores is the largest factor in what has led to the downfall of competitive bowling. There are, of course, lots of accompanying factors that we can nitpick or debate about, and I think a decline would have happened either way just because there are a lot more things competing for people's time and energy now. But if bowling had stayed affordable and simple, or at least more tightly regulated, I think it would have stayed much more popular for much longer, and we wouldn't be talking about string pins or Bolero, and somebody posting on Facebook about a 300 or 800 wouldn't get an eye roll as you hurry to scroll past. Thanks for watching, and may the strikes be with you.